Diet Coke, please.
And 5 minutes of your time.
Imagine a vast green field that belongs to everyone, and simultaneously no one. This is a classic image from ecological and economic theory, known as the tragedy of the commons. If every shepherd releases an extra cow onto this field to earn a little more, the field will very soon turn into a barren desert. In the cult series Breaking Bad, such a field is not land, but the fragile stability of the Albuquerque drug market itself. When we look at the story of Walter White, we see not just a personal drama, but a massive systemic collapse that is perfectly described by Garrett Hardin's theory. The essence of this theory, formulated back in 1968, lies in the conflict between personal interests and the public good. Hardin wrote in his work, "Ruin is the destination toward which all men rush, each pursuing his own best interest in a society that believes in the freedom of the commons. Freedom in a commons brings ruin to all." In Heisenberg's world, the common resource is invisibility to law enforcement, logistics predictability, and general quiet in the region. As long as all players follow the rules, the field remains green. But as soon as a player appears whose ego knows no bounds, the entire system begins to die rapidly. The nature of the criminal resource in Albuquerque is such that the most valuable and simultaneously most scarce thing here is secrecy. This is that very communal field where all participants of the process graze. If one dealer starts shooting in the middle of the street, police attention is drawn to everyone else. The costs of one loud crime fall on the shoulders of the entire criminal community, while only one aggressor receives the benefit from solving their local conflict. Before the appearance of Walter White, this resource was in relative equilibrium, maintained by fear of the cartel and the professionalism of individual players. The city of Albuquerque, in reality and in the series, is described as a place with many social problems, including poverty and drug addiction, which makes it an ideal field for such a business. However, the stability of this market depended on how quietly affairs were conducted. Drug trafficking is a business based on risk management and information asymmetry. When information about activities becomes public due to loud deaths or excessive violence, the resource of invisibility is depleted. Hardin called this environmental degradation. And in the context of the series, this degradation manifests through increased DEA attention and the destruction of habitual supply chains. Gustavo Fring understood this better than anyone. He was not just a drug lord, he was a highly qualified manager.
Choose your own hours, of course. Come and go as you please. So long as the quota is met.
Who realized that without preserving the common resource, his empire would turn to ash. Fring actually acted in the role of the Regulator, about whom Hardin wrote as the only way to avoid the tragedy of the commons. In his theory, Hardin proposed either the privatization of the resource or the establishment of strict external control, which he called mutual coercion, mutually agreed upon. Gus implemented both strategies simultaneously. He privatized production by creating a sterile superlab and established strict rules for all market participants to minimize risks for the common field. If we view the drug business as a corporate structure, then Gus Fring is the ideal CEO who cares about long-term capitalization, not immediate profit. His professionalism and attention to detail were aimed at keeping the common field of invisibility untouched. He told Walter,
What does a man do, Walter? A man provides for his family. And he does it even when he's not appreciated or respected or even loved. He simply bears up, and he does it because he's a man.
Embedded in this phrase is the deep meaning of a systemic approach. Providing for the family for Gus is not just money, but also the creation of a safe, stable environment that can exist for years. Gus Fring spent enormous efforts on maintaining his facade. His chain of restaurants, Los Pollos Hermanos, and active participation in community life were not just camouflage, but a way of managing the authorities' attention. He invited DEA agents to dinners, made donations, and created the image of an impeccable citizen. Thus, he strengthened the common field, making it more resistant to external threats. His management style was based on dispassionate calculations, impartial calculations where there was no place for emotions. Any manifestation of violence on his part was targeted, surgical, and aimed at restoring order, not at satisfying an ego. In the context of Hardin's theory, Fring is that very manager whom the community hires to monitor the number of livestock on the pasture. He limited the ambitions of his subordinates and partners, understanding that excessive activity would lead to catastrophe.
You are done. Fired.
When he punished employees or eliminated competitors, he did it for the sake of preserving the system. However, he immediately saw a destructive element in Walter. At their first meeting, Gus said,
I don't think we're alike at all, Mr. White. You are not a cautious man at all. Your partner was late, and he was high. You can never trust a drug addict.
For Gus, caution is not cowardice. It is a way of preserving the common good. Garrett Hardin mentioned in his work that in a world where all resources are limited, a single non-angel in the community spoils the environment for everyone else. The non-angel gains an advantage by pursuing his interests at the expense of others, and over time this forces even decent participants to break the rules to survive. Walter White entered the criminal world of Albuquerque precisely as such a character. His greed, covered by care for his family, and his exorbitant ego became that very extra cow that eventually ate all the grass on the field. From the very beginning, Walt acted as a rational egoist in the short term, but as a madman in the long term. His decision to produce a product of 90% purity was a technological breakthrough, but a systemic nightmare. Hardin explained this through the mathematics of utility. The positive component for the shepherd from adding one cow is close to +1, since he takes all the profit for himself. The negative component, the degradation of the field, is shared by everyone, and for a specific shepherd, it constitutes only a small fraction of -1. Walt did not understand that his personal success created costs for the system, measured in hundreds of lives, and the complete destruction of the structure. Walter's quote,
If I was in the meth business or the money business, neither. I'm in the empire business.
vividly demonstrates his detachment from reality. While Gus built a sustainable system, Walt built a monument to his own greatness. His pride blinded him. He ignored the external effects of his actions. Gus told him directly,
You have poor judgment.
but Walt was no longer rational. Every action of his was an act of consuming the resource of invisibility, which had been accumulating for years thanks to the efforts of people like Gus and Mike. Walt simply came and drained this well to the bottom for the sake of his own triumph. If Walter White is a new type of destroyer, then the Mexican cartel and the Salamanca family represent a traditional threat to the community. Their approach to business is based on fear, territory, and open violence, which in itself is a form of irrational resource use. For Hector Salamanca, drug trafficking was a question of power and domination, not logistics and economics. Their methods were loud and bloody, which constantly put the common field of stability in Albuquerque at risk. As Hardin wrote, "The tragedy of the commons remorselessly generates ruin." Gus Fring endured humiliations from the cartel for decades, understanding that they were bad managers. The cartel viewed Albuquerque as a territory for exploitation, not caring about the resource being able to recover. They acted like nomads who deplete the land and move on. The confrontation between Gus and the cartel is a struggle between a modern corporate approach to community management and an outdated predatory method. Gus strove to replace the chaotic overgrazing of the cartel with his ordered system, where every step is calculated. However, even Gus could not completely avoid the tragedy because he was forced to share the field with players like the Salamancas. The tragedy of the commons teaches us that even one careless or overly aggressive participant can trigger a chain reaction of collapse. When Hector Salamanca decided to blow himself up to kill Gus, it became the final chord of the destruction of the old order. Gus tried to control the situation to the last, but his personal hatred for Hector became that crack in the armor through which chaos seeped. When the Regulator, in the person of Gus Fring, was eliminated, the communal field of Albuquerque was instantly subjected to what sociologists call normative slippage or regulatory failure. Without a central authority to enforce the rules, every petty player felt the freedom to act solely in their own interests.
If Gus can manage it, then so can we.
Walter White, who believed he was now the king, actually only accelerated the process of decomposition. He did not possess Gus's ability to build institutions. He only knew how to destroy obstacles. Mike Ermintrout, who was the soul and hands of Fring's system, expressed the essence of the tragedy in his last conversation with Walt.
We had Fring. We had a lab. We had everything we needed. It all ran like clockwork. You could have shut your mouth, cooked, and made as much money as you ever needed. You just had to blow it up. You and your pride and your ego. You just had to be the man. If you'd done your job, known your place, we'd all be fine right now.
These words of Mike are the perfect description of how one ambitious participant destroys a perfectly functioning community for the sake of personal ambitions. The appearance of Jack's gang and the neo-Nazis is the logical outcome of the community's destruction. When civilized forms of management disappear, those who do not care about the future at all come in their place. Jack and his people are locusts. They don't graze cattle, they simply eat everything they see. This is the apocalypse that ensues at the end of any tragedy of the commons if overgrazing is not stopped in time. Hardin wrote, "Ruin is the destination toward which all men rush," and Jack's gang became the embodiment of this final destination. Even in his final confession to Skylar, Walt confirms that his motive was never the good of the family.
I did it for me. I liked it. I was good at it. And I was alive.
This is the definitive proof that Walter White was that very rational predator Hardin wrote about. He consciously consumed common resources for his own pleasure, knowing that eventually it would lead to ruins. He admitted that his freedom in using the common field had no limits, which led to the destruction of the field itself. The history of Albuquerque in the series shows that in the long run, egoism always loses to the system. Gustavo Fring created something that could have existed for decades because he invested in infrastructure and trust. Walter White, on the other hand, acted like a short-term investor in a financial pyramid scheme. He extracted maximum profit here and now, not caring that tomorrow the market would collapse. As Hardin predicted, freedom in the use of common pool resources inevitably leads to their depletion. The tragedy of the commons in this case grew into a personal tragedy for all participants. The death of Gus, the death of Hank, the destruction of Walt's family, the broken life of Jesse. All this is the price the community paid for allowing one person to act uncontrollably. For the Albuquerque drug market, this meant the end of the era of big money and the beginning of an era of bloody chaos. The entire system collapsed, leaving behind only memories of the blue product and a scorched desert in New Mexico. Ultimately, the example of Albuquerque teaches us that the stability of any society, even a shadow one, rests on a fragile balance and the awareness of common interests. Walter White thought he was building an empire, but in reality, he was simply burning the common field on which his own house stood. And when the flames died down, it turned out that the empire was no more, and the field had turned to ash. His path confirmed Hardin's words. Freedom in a commons brings ruin to all. And this ruin was shown most graphically in the final shots of the series, where the protagonist dies alone amidst the instruments of his destructive talent.
Nothing stops this train. Nothing.